health, wellness, fitness, and everything in between. We're removing the taboo from what really matters in midlife. I'm your host, Michelle Folan, and this is Asking for a Friend. One thing I always aim to do is bring our audience a wide variety of topics in the health and wellness arena. Sometimes we have guests on the show that may challenge the status quo or medical norms to which we're accustomed, but I believe that when we are searching for answers when it comes to our health and the health of our families, it's important to know and understand all the options. We are not one size fits all, and certainly as medical science and innovation evolves, there may be an opportunity to explore alternatives that are safe and proven over time. Neil Markey is the co-founder and CEO of Beckley Retreats, the world's only psychedelics retreat program backed by 25 years of scientific research and an ecosystem of expertise that honors global wisdom traditions. A former captain in the U.S. Army Special Operations, 2nd Ranger Battalion, Neil served in Iraq and Afghanistan before studying at Columbia University, where he struggled with depression and PTSD. This led him to explore mindfulness and psychedelics as part of his healing journey. Prior to Beckley, he was Chief Growth Officer for a $450 million private equity portfolio company and a consultant at McKinsey & Company. Neil Markey, welcome to Asking for a Friend.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
We chatted for a couple minutes before we got started, but I'd love for you, Neil, to tell the audience a little bit more about where you're from, where your roots are, and then I want to hear more about your stint in the Army and all that good stuff too.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a small town about an hour north of Washington, D.C. called Frederick, Maryland. And my whole family's still there. Actually, on my dad's side, we can trace back. They've been there for 300 years. So that's, we're deep in Frederick. And it certainly feels like home. And then I was studying math at University of Maryland. And then September 11th happened. And I wanted to go help. I thought I was doing the right thing. So I joined the officer program. You could actually see the smoke from the top of the Pentagon, or from the top of the football stadium at the Pentagon. And it was a huge day in my life, like it was for many.
Yeah.
And I finished school and went in as a lieutenant. And I believed that whole weapons of mass destruction narrative that we ended up getting pretty wildly wrong, unfortunately.
Right.
But by that time, I had already made the commitment and ended up in Iraq as a lieutenant, leading an infantry platoon, and then got a chance to go try out for the Ranger Regiment, which is a small special operations unit. And when I was there, I was more on the planning side. So I was a bit removed from the worst of it. But it still left some marks for sure. And, I mean, now looking back, everybody in that unit had some form of PTSD. I mean, these are the guys that were doing the night raids.
Yeah.
And so it was wildly intense. And although part of me loved it and was so fortunate to be there, I really looked up to those guys. And I mean, Leroy Petrie got the Medal of Honor when I was there, and his locker was right next to mine. It was larger than life. And it was wildly traumatic. It was horrible.
Yeah.
And I got out in 2012 and went to graduate school, and by some measures was doing well. I was putting one foot in front of the other, but by some other measures, I was really struggling. I was starting to isolate and, having trouble sleeping and severe anxiety and anger. And I tried quite a few different traditional interventions, different medications and sleeping pills, and didn't have a whole lot of luck. And then was introduced to meditation while I was a grad student, and meditation was exactly what I needed. And I started practicing that and learning more about other interventions that weren't just the establishment. And then I had the chance to have some professionally facilitated psychedelic experiences. There's a long history of veterans, particularly the special operations community, getting access to these treatments on the underground in the United States and in Central and South America. And I was fortunate to have some of those. And for me, it was profound.
Yeah.
It was a real opportunity to reset. Now, it wasn't one and done. but it was the beginning of a kind of a new path and learning a new way to live. So that's kind of how I got into this work over 10 years ago now.
So, yeah, because I was going to make the assumption that the VA wasn't offering you these types of medications, right? And I'll call them medications, but
no, they weren't.
No.
But the VA just put in their strategic plan for the first time last year to research these compounds. So it's happening. I'm encouraged.
Okay.
And the VA's got a big hairy mission. It's a hard mission. So I think they're doing a pretty good job. But the reality is the drug companies have a lot of influence in this whole system, in the VA and in the established medical system, and the incentives are what they are, and they drive a certain type of behavior because there's money to be made.
Correct.
It's just the reality of where we are, So the reason you don't see a lot of people get prescribed healthy diet and exercise and meditation and time in nature is there's just not a lot of money to be made in that. So it's just not going to be top of the priority list.
You don't have to get me started on this because
yeah,
you're speaking my language, and I came from the pharmaceutical industry. I spent years there. I left, and now really just what I'm seeing now kind of transpire with the recent election. And I think we're hopefully going to start seeing the value of nutraceuticals and more natural modalities to treat people because it's not being made available to people. And I think that's such a travesty. One other thing, Neil, is, and I don't know if this is cliche, but thank you for your service. Appreciate that very much, that time that you spent honoring your service to the country. So thank you for that.
Thank you for that. Yeah, it was my path, and I'm so fortunate for it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, even as hard as it was and your life afterwards and coming out of that, it's who you are today. And you wouldn't have pursued this path of helping others, right? And so it's that double-edged thing that you've got. But I do want to ask you, so when you got introduced into the world of psychedelics, are we talking psilocybin? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, psilocybin.
Okay.
Mushrooms.
Okay. Will you explain that a little bit, what those compounds look like? And
yeah, there's a bunch of different types of fungus or mushrooms, and a certain percentage of them have a psychoactive compound in them called psilocybin. And when you take it in a large enough dose, it makes you hallucinate or trip or be high. And if you do these experiences in a controlled manner, it looks like you can actually get a lot out of them in terms of letting things go and developing a new perspective. And looks like they have some pretty direct impact on the central nervous system and sort of letting things kind of rewire. If you look at what happens in the brain under an fMRI, when people are on psilocybin at high doses, it allows parts of the brain to connect that maybe have never connected before or have lost connection. So the brain lights up in ways. And so it's really fascinating, but it looks like there's quite a broad array of potential use cases. So they could be used on the clinical end of the spectrum as a way to kind of get someone that is, dealing with PTSD, treatment-resistant depression, things like this, to kind of get them up to better and well. And then it looks like you can take people that are generally well and give them these experiences, controlled environment, and they can kind of move up the ladder. They can develop higher levels of empathy, this sense of awe, creativity, cognitive function. It looks like they're neuroregenerative, so they're healthy for the brain so long as if they're done in the right way. And I should also mention, too, that they are very different than our typical pharmaceutical. So to use them optimally, it requires kind of some awareness and buy-in from the user. So you can't just take you can, but if you just take mushrooms like you would take a drug your doctor gave you and went on about your day, that's the wrong approach. So there's a real intentionality that's required with these to get something out of them, or to at least optimize the experience. That's quite different than what we're used to as Americans.
Okay, so I have to say, The only real knowledge I have had of this process is, do you remember, and I don't know how long ago this was, but Chelsea Handler?
Yes.
Okay, and I guess it was like a shaman. It was like the sweat tent and the whole deal. And she had quite a reaction to it. And that's what I think of when I think of
Right.
going through that process. How close is that to what you see in your experiences?
Yeah, so you can have these experiences in a doctor's office by yourself with headphones on, in a clinical environment. And we as an organization are supportive of people that do it in that way, because for some indications and desired outcomes and individuals, that's the better entry point.
Mm-hmm.
You can also go do these experiences in Peru, up the river a couple days in the middle of nowhere in a very traditional way. We're kind of in the middle. We try and bring the best of Western rigor in terms of safety standards and like a comfortable, nice experience, but also bring in what we've learned from how traditional communities are doing this in terms of the intentionality and making it special and doing it in groups and having some ceremony around it. Because what we've seen, and I think that this world is understanding, is that everything that happens around it, the context, the set and the setting, the who you're with, the location you are, the what led you up to it, the preparation, how the experience is facilitated, all the after, the integration, the making sense of, the integrating it into your life, that matters just as much, if not more, as the actual compound does. So we really think about it as, we're running integrative health programs that use these experiences as a way to kind of accelerate positive change.
Yeah, it's what you're saying is it's the total experience that you bring people in, and it's very spiritual, it sounds like.
There's definitely a spiritual component to it. I think it's hard to deny that, but there's these phenomena that are happening, and it becomes very clear when you have these experiences that there's something that is alive in us, and there's a connection between us and other human beings. We can measure this in some ways, but I don't think we have the full understanding by any means. But we know that we're electromagnetic beings, and you can pick up on my central nervous system and I can pick up on yours. And so there's all this interconnectedness between us humans. And then there's an interconnectedness between us and nature, living things. Again, we can measure some pieces of that. But when you have one of these experiences, it becomes very clear, not just from like a rational, okay, I understand the mechanics, but like from an intuitive kind of deep knowingness. And when that happens, things shift. And we don't understand all of what's happening, but it's quite significant. Many people come through, and I'll tell you that we just were doing a 2024 kind of an assessment of ourselves and things, and 88% of our guests said it was the most meaningful or one of the most meaningful experiences of their life.
Wow.
So something profound is happening.
Yeah.
It's quite fascinating.
I want to back up just a little bit. So when you were at McKinsey and you were in the corporate world, and during that time, I think is when you were struggling to kind of piece everything together. And at what point did you say the traditional methods just aren't helping me? When did you finally say, okay, I gotta do something else?
Well, that was really when I got out of the service and into grad school. And I had this period where I learned how to live differently. I really got into meditation. I stopped drinking. I started a small business with my brother when I was in grad school. And then when I finished school, I did a teacher certification in meditation. And for a period of time was teaching meditation and working on this small business. And so I had purposeful work. I was living in my hometown. I had good community. I was exercising. I was doing all the right things, and all of my symptoms were gone. I felt inspired every day. I was happy. I was optimistic, all these positive feelings that everybody wants. What is clear to me now with the benefit of hindsight was when I went into the corporate world, I lost my way a little bit. My well-being started to slip. And I think that was because there was a bit of a mismatch in terms of values and a mismatch in terms of the work that I'm supposed to be doing as a small town kid from Frederick, Maryland, and just what I want to, be part of in this world.
Yeah.
And I was in the corporate world for, 5 years or so, McKinsey. And then I was doing some, restructuring work with a private equity company. And, at the tail end of that work, I remember realizing that some of my symptoms were coming back, the stress, the sleeplessness, the, relationships are just a bit more,
strained.
Strained. I was out of shape. And then I was looking at a lot of my peers, and many of them were having similar symptoms, and none of them had been to war. And a lot of them had impressive degrees and came from well-to-do families. And, they weren't exhibiting PTSD symptoms, but they could be doing a lot better if they were taking better care of themselves.
Yeah.
And they had all the resources. It was just like an environment thing and a kind of a value alignment thing. And so I kind of had this valley and then realization, and then went back down, and then hit another kind of like little, maybe not a rock bottom, but a wake up where it's like, hey, you need to live differently. Like this path is not for you. And that's when I left.
Okay.
And that's when I met Amanda Fielding and then this whole Beckley organization. And, now I think I'm working on something that is on path for me.
Yeah. And back to the stress thing. When we overload ourselves with stress, whether it's work, home, whatever, sometimes I don't think we have an appreciation for how much that affects our physical being.
Oh my God. It's very significant.
Yeah. And I think the other piece of that, which I love that you mentioned, that, when you were in the corporate world, you weren't doing what you were really meant to be doing.
Yeah.
And I had a similar epiphany about this time last year, and when I left the corporate world. And it's scary when you make that leap. So I'm curious.
It really is.
When you left your rather cushy corporate job, like, what were you thinking? Like, were you scared?
Yeah, I think I had some anxiety around what was next, but I just knew I wasn't going to keep doing that,
Mm-hmm.
And I got back to teaching meditation because I had done that previously, and I kind of knew how to be well. I had been well before, so I tried to remove things from my life and get back to the basics and take good care of myself and get sunshine and exercise and eat good. And I was fortunate to be able to not work for a bit of time and just allow things to kind of come into my life, which I think now if I talk to younger veterans, and it's like, if you can create space, if you don't have space in your mind and you don't have space in your day or in your life, it's hard for kind of new things to sprout. And so I think I was able to create some space after that corporate world and get back to doing things that I kind of just innately gravitated towards. And then through that, this, really significant opportunity for me presented itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
When people come to you and Beckley, is there a common theme with what they're trying to achieve?
Yeah, there is. They're seekers, and they've generally done really well for themselves and have already spent, some time doing personal, professional development. And they want to be better fathers, sons, daughters, business partners. They want to appreciate life more. They know it's moving fast, and they don't necessarily want to slow down, but they want to make it more meaningful, have more depth, be more present. And so we'll have people come down. Our programs are explicitly non-medical, so we don't treat depression or PTSD. If people have clinical level indications, we try and point them to facilities that are more appropriate. Ours are more for the betterment of the well. So it's people that are generally doing okay, but want to become more creative, more empathetic, improve cognitive function, develop some new, better habits, make some real change, process loss. So yeah, but there's this seeker thread,
Okay.
These are in some ways adventurers and people that, this is still it's not near as taboo as it was a couple years ago, but it's still a bit edgy for many people. So it's a certain type of individual to try it.
I get that. I do. And you do have to be a little bit more of an adventurous soul to kind of put yourself out there to do this. But to me, in a very simple way to explain it, it's like it kind of cleans the pipes.
It cleans things out for sure.
Yeah.
There's another metaphor that I like a lot. It's if you think about like a ski mountain and then skiers go down it all day, then by the end of the day there's kind of ruts, right? And everything after that, you're basically going to go ride in the ruts because you can't go across them. And what these experiences do is, in some ways, it's like a fresh coat of snow. And so then if you're intentional, you can lay new routes down the mountain. You can lay new thought patterns in. You can lay new emotional patterns in, so that when stimulus comes into your life, you react differently or have a space to be able to choose instead of this kind of well-rooted pattern. But if you don't do anything around the experience, then the likelihood that you just kind of like regroove back into those old paths is actually quite high, because they're deep and they've been there for quite some time. So it takes this buy-in or effort on the individual to kind of like, you have to do some things around those experiences to really, make change that is going to stick for more than a short period of time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Hey, Neil, we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, I want to talk about kind of who your typical client is. Are you feeling overwhelmed by the changes that come with midlife? Struggling with weight, energy, or finding time for yourself? You're not alone. I get it, because I've been there too. I specialize in helping midlife women just like you transform their health and lives through personalized nutrition and coaching that fits your real life. Together, we'll tackle those unique challenges, whether it's balancing your hormones, dealing with cravings, or boosting your energy. It's not just about diets. It's about reclaiming your strength and confidence one step at a time. Check out the show notes of this episode and shoot me an email. I'd love to learn more about you and your challenges. All right, we are back. When we first started recording, I told you that my audience is typically 50 plus, and you smiled. Why did you smile?
Just because it's been like a bit of a little sweet surprise for our guests to be older. And I don't know, I love guests that are older. They're just like better guests. They're just more sure of themselves, and there's just like some sweetness to me in it for some reason.
Yeah, I think maybe this is just my perspective, they kind of already know who they are.
Exactly.
Right? And so they may be a little more open to it being into the whole experience.
Yes.
Even though they're older, they may not have as much baggage. Like to try to, like all this stuff that they've got to get through to be open to doing this, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Baggage is a bad word.
No, but it's something like that. They're not holding on so tight. Mm-hmm. They're just like more free to kind of allow and learn and yeah.
And you have couples that come and do this together?
Definitely. Yeah, I think that most of our guests, I know most of our guests are individuals that come down, but I think in some ways coming with a friend or partner or mother or daughter can be really sweet, because you have this existing relationship. So there's some trust. And so that's like a little bit of a lifeline. Mm-hmm. But then you can kind of come in and you have the group dynamic, which a bunch of people that you are getting to know. And then you have that relationship on the back. And so, yeah, that happens. We have more, we have a lot of people that come down, or even small groups that'll come down. You have to ask a few more questions. You have to kind of make sure. What you don't want, and we've seen this, as you can imagine, is like so-and-so will be like, I just need to get my husband Steve down and we're going to get him fixed and then we're going to be good.
Right.
And it's like, if the relationship is, if the relationship has a lot of turmoil or there's like a lot of challenge, you just need to be more careful, and you need to kind of let the individuals know the risks there. But if the relationship's generally healthy and both people are coming down on their own because they find it exciting and they're curious and they want to learn and have an experience, and oh, by the way, we'll look at the dynamic between us two because we're going to be together, then that's perfect. That's like a really beautiful scenario.
And given your military background, I would imagine that safety is paramount for you. So what does that look like? What would it look like for me if I were to come down and I would want to go through this experience?
Yeah, it's one of the best compliments I've gotten over the years, or we've gotten as an organization, was someone told us that it felt like an extremely loving and well-run military organization. Because we just take it seriously. Good, it's serious work. And so, we think about safety kind of across the entire experience for the guest, and it really starts with the screening. So you need to make sure that the individual coming down doesn't have any contraindications or psychiatric concerns or medical issues. And so we do a questionnaire and then we do a call. And we're also looking just for suitability. Is this person at the right place in their personal development to be a good fit for what we do, and we say no to a good chunk of people and try and point them in directions that are more appropriate. And then there's the preparation. So we teach people the basic practices, well-being skills to help navigate these experiences, to get their body in a better state when they have these experiences. So we teach meditation and mindful movement and breathwork exercises and give some thoughts on the right diet leading up to the experience. And then on site, the set and setting is really important. So we're on beautiful estates. We're away from everything. It's just us and the facilitation team. I think we have some of the best facilitators in the world because, frankly, we pay really well. And I think our facilitators really appreciate affiliating with Amanda Fielding and the Beckley Foundation. So it's good for their personal brand. So we've been able to be super selective around who we even allow to have the honor of holding these experiences. And we have a really high bar for our facilitators. And then the facilitator to guest ratio, I think that's really important. There's places that have huge numbers of guests, and it's more just good luck. Group size is around 15, and for that we'll have 5 facilitators plus a nurse plus sitters for the psilocybin session plus the facility staff. So it's like we have a lot of personnel that are there to look after them. The dose is important. So all of our guests get a custom amount based on a discussion between them and the senior facilitator. So we make sure that that's appropriate. Now it's within a defined range, which is what you would see in clinical trials in the United States. But, that's tailored. It's just really thoughtful, the set and the setting. And then on the back end is the integration that I think, I'm a bit biased, obviously, but I think we have one of, if not the most thoughtful integration period where we're taking people, from these experiences back into real life and trying to give them the tools that they need to help make behavior change and giving them, all the tools afterwards. So we really think about it across the whole spectrum. And then, we gather metrics. So we get feedback from our guests. We get feedback from our facilitators. We assess that. That rolls into our planning. We've made different changes to our programs to try and, be iterative and learn. We just, things that you would expect in a doctor's office, or a very professionally run organization. We try and, do that at a high level. Now, for people to know, there's no governing bodies around this right now. So if you're going to go have these experiences, it's good to ask the questions because it's on the centers and the facilitators to police themselves.
Right.
And there are amazing human beings out there that are doing great work. And there are people that, frankly, should not be doing this work. And so it's just, it's right now, it's a bit buyer beware.
Right.
Because there's no central organization that's ensuring standards or anything right now. We're trying to set the bar high.
I love everything that you're saying because it sounds like you all have really done your homework and you continue to make these improvements as you get feedback and you work these experiences. How many years have you been doing this now?
Beckley Retreats has been doing it for 4 years.
Okay, 4 years. And you are in 2 locations?
Jamaica and the Netherlands. It's the 2 locations where we can do this work in this way completely legally and above board. That's another thing from a safety perspective that I think is important. There's places in the world where you can do this where it's legally gray. And then what happens when things are legally gray is some parts are, not fully above board. So for us in Jamaica, for instance, mushroom production, cultivation, and sale is completely legal. So it's easier to ensure kind of like the standards and be able to test and check and ask questions. And so we're hopeful that more places are going to legalize this type of work. But right now we're pretty limited to Jamaica and the Netherlands.
Do you feel like the United States will ever get there?
Yeah, I do. So in Oregon and Colorado, it's legal at the state level. Now, it's complicated and we're not there for a reason because it's still very clearly federally illegal. So as a company, you're very clearly breaking the Controlled Substances Act. And the potential penalties are real.
Mm-hmm.
And then it makes it a bit harder to get insurance, that all the banking gets complicated, and you're breaking the law. So for us, it was, we're planning to wait, but we're watching it. And we're really supportive of organizations that are kind of, out front and taking a bit more risk, because I think we need to do it. I think something could happen under this administration to reschedule mushrooms from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. And then that'll open things up significantly. And, all these different psychedelic compounds are different and have different risk profiles and different appropriate ways to use them. But, I think mushrooms, if so long as they're done in the right way, they're quite low risk. And they're natural, they're non-toxic. And so for them to be a federal Schedule 1, which is the same as heroin, and it's completely divorced from any logic. Or data or anything that we know. So hopefully people will see the light and that'll change before too long.
You had mentioned something that I thought was kind of interesting, is that once people go through this experience, you help facilitate the after piece, how do they integrate this experience back into their daily life? And I was curious, with these transformative journeys, are you all in touch with people after they leave the Netherlands or Jamaica? Okay.
Yeah. So that's roughly a 6-week integration period where we bring the group back together a few more times digitally, sort of Zoom. And then some guests will want more one-on-one, so we'll have one-on-ones with them. And then, we check in with them on different intervals, and then also try and bring all of our alumni together when possible to reconnect and give encouragement. And so, the answer's yes. I think, right now we're doing the best we can because of the way the laws are. So we're flying people into these remote locations and then they're going back home. That's not optimal. I'm hopeful that if you give us, in enough time, these centers will be able to be near where people live.
Yeah.
I still think you want them in nature. I don't think you want to just do this stuff only in doctors' offices. Yeah. So I think you want retreat centers where people can have the digital detox, get off the grid for a minute, really focus. But then they can go back to that city that's nearby, and there's enough people that have gone through these programs that they can kind of have some community there easily in person. Yeah. I think that's more optimal than, we're trying to fix it, but it's not perfect.
Right. Well, and I would assume that after people go through this experience together, there's this real community and bond that they would develop.
It's true. Yeah.
Okay.
It's true. Yeah. I told you the stat, 88%, said it's the most meaningful or one of the most meaningful. And I think for many, we're just used to living a certain way and having these kind of very transactional relationships. You can work with someone for a decade and not know much about them other than like, how's your weekend? Kind of like super surface. It's just very normal. And then you have an experience like this with other human beings, and it's quite raw and deep, and you see people and people really like see you, and it's moving.
Yeah.
You know, it's and many of us are, you know, we're kind of yearning that. We're missing that. We want to connect more. We want to put this facade down that maybe we've had at work, and we want to just be real. And so yeah, I think that's just that what's happening amongst the group for people is sometimes one of the most important things they take away.
I have a question. So, you know, we talked about, you know, you do have a lot of clients, guests that are older. What's the oldest guests you've had?
We had an 80-year-old woman and an 86-year-old man, husband and wife, that came down for her 80th birthday.
Where were they from?
They were from New York,
okay.
And they had lived like a super colorful life, lived all over the world, very successful. And they kind of came down just with this sense of adventure. And they've actually been really helpful to us because they've been willing to tell their story multiple times and connect with people that are interested about doing this work that are in that age group. And they didn't come in with this intention, but they since after the program, they immediately stopped drinking. They just had no interest in drinking anymore. And now they have this morning kind of ritual they do together where they drink tea and they meditate. And it's just so sweet. Oh. And they were one of the ones that said this is one of the most meaningful things they've ever done. And it's just so hard. I mean, we as an organization, it really is hard to kind of put into words these experiences that in some way are just like they're just beyond words, you know, like you have to live it, but they're really beautiful.
I have a question. Since you've done this, or maybe you could speak to your guests that you have at your two locations, is meditation more meaningful now after you go through this experience?
For sure. I've been trying to get people to meditate for like 10 years now. And it's hard because meditation takes time, and it's really hard to articulate the benefits if you've never experienced them. So this like idea of like more peace or more spaciousness, if you've never had that, it doesn't resonate. Where fitness, we're such visual creatures, you know, I can show you a picture of a fit person and people are like, oh, okay, I get that. It's really hard with meditation because it's all internal, right? And, but there for sure is something happening. Meditation and these experiences are complementary and kind of pointing in the same direction. And so for us, meditation's foundational. It's a big part of our program. And yes, many people, the kind of compliance rate for meditation after a psychedelic experience is much higher. We don't know why, but it opens something up and people just understand why it's so important to sit and be for periods of time frequently. One of my friends, kind of business partners, runs a veteran organization that teaches meditation for people that are coming out of the service. And his kind of benchmark of success was groups of 20 to 25, 6 months later, check in with them. If he had one or two that was still meditating, that was good. That was good for him.
He was happy.
But I mean, that's an incredibly low number, but that was the reality. Now, he said he's intentionally tried to seek out veterans that are having these psychedelic experiences and grab them soon after they've had the experiences and put them into these programs. And he said it's almost flipped.
Really?
So 6 months later, 20 of them are still meditating, which I just think is so even these experiences, even if we never understand the mechanics of them or understand the so what, we know meditation is transformative for people. I mean, you look at the research on it, we have so many years of research. It's just helpful for everything, you know, sleep and blood pressure and sense of well-being. And I mean, it's really, extraordinary in what it can do for people. We just can't get people to do it.
Right.
You know, it just seems so boring. And so
I'm one of
if
them.
these experiences, Yeah, well, maybe come down. We'll see if
I am the worst. Like I don't know if I have ADHD, but meditating, it's like I crawl out of my own skin. I have a hard time sitting in a spot for that long and trying not to think about stuff that I have to do.
you and all humans.
I am the worst. And I've not done a show just on meditation. I need to probably do that this year, but I know I've got some work to do.
Well, I can help you with meditation.
Okay.
I think I've got some different techniques. I've heard, I think sometimes the way you're describing it, I've heard people describe it before, and there's actually some simple things that you can do to reframe it that'll make it a bit easier. So we can maybe catch up sometime.
All right, we'll chat about that. I want to know though. So I know these experiences are very spiritual. How have you tried to kind of navigate keeping them very spiritual, but still kind of keeping this as a business? Because clearly you've got to kind of straddle both sides of this.
Yeah, I think it's the middle path, I mean, we're a public benefit corporation, which I just firmly believe is a good model, and we need more companies that have a dual mission. And so I think if you look at capitalism at its extremes, the big, huge international behemoths that have, maybe have lost their way and lost heart and are just trying to maximize profits for their shareholders, nothing else matters, literally by law. If you try and do something as a for-profit company, your shareholders can sue you if it's not maximizing their dollars. So I think there's something wrong with that model at its extremes. I think capitalism actually works really well locally, but once it gets to a certain size, or then it starts to get, or kind of loses heart, loses its connection with the community and its employees, and it just becomes so mechanical, then it gets a little scary. Mm-hmm. On the other side of the spectrum is nonprofits, which are not without their challenges either. There's 40,000 veteran nonprofits in the United States.
Oh, gosh.
Right? I mean,
yeah, I had no idea.
Like 1,000 per state almost. I mean, how does that, so you can't tell me that all of the philanthropy is getting down to the people that actually need it, because it's so fragmented. It's a mess. Yeah. It's an absolute mess. And then there's all these silly rules in the nonprofit world where you can't pay your people really well because it's only about the mission, and they can't have equity. They can't build, financial independence. You can't pay commissions. And so to me, that model's, it works in some ways, but it's not without its flaws. And so I really just believe in these middle path companies. I think Patagonia is such a good example. The world needs products and services. And so Patagonia sells products that the world needs. They try and do it in a really thoughtful way, sourcing it from the right place, making it really high quality so you don't just throw it away. They do repairs. So they're super ethical in that way. And then they have a dual mission. They want to do good things for the planet. And it's not just window dressing kind of
I get that.
BS. It's legit. They give real money to environmental causes. And so to me, that's a better model. They're self-sustaining. They're generating on their own. They don't have to keep looking for donor dollars every year. They can put strategic plans together. They can hire really good talent. And so to me, what would Spirit want more in this world to kind of create some more equilibrium and some more balance? It would want more companies that are trying to find that middle path and manage, and be mindful of all the different stakeholders there are to be thoughtful of. Companies back in the day used to just have more inherent felt responsibility for their employees.
Yeah. Now
it's kind of gotten away from that. Same for the communities.
Yeah.
So I think we just kind of need to veer back. So I think you can have this, but there is a tension, but I think it's a healthy tension. I think it's a really healthy tension.
So I have a question for you. This is kind of a personal question. What is one And besides meditation, don't say meditation because I know you meditate. What is one of your core pillars of self-care?
After meditation.
After meditation. It's cheating.
Then, well, I do think that's foundational. And then the next level is a few things. But if you made me pick one, I would probably say like exercise, moving the body.
Okay.
But I would also put in there good connections, purposeful work, sunshine, healthy diet.
Yeah. Yeah. You're singing my tune. I love all those things. So
they're all good things.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing those. Neil, where can the listeners find you and find Beckley Retreats?
Yeah, we're online. So if you Google Beckley Retreats, we'll come up. It's just beckleyretreats.com. We're on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. And we do, we have if you send us an email, welcome@Beckley Retreats or info@Beckley Retreats, we're super responsive. There's a place on our website where you can book a one-on-one call. So, there's plenty of availability for those. And we know that these experiences, for many, they're new. And so people have a lot of questions, and it's a big decision to kind of make an investment like this and come do one of these. And so we'll take as much time as needed. It is not uncommon for us to have 2 or 3 calls with someone, and then they want us to speak with their husband or wife, or then they want to speak with the facilitator. We're happy to kind of do all those things so that people have everything they need to feel really good about coming down.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, we're we have chat on our website, and I'm like, we should put that this is actually a real human, and they can text us, and if
not a bot.
If we do it's not a bot. We're not bots. I'm like, that's a unique selling point.
It is actually.
You can actually talk to a person.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're trying to kind of keep it, really thoughtful and connect in a real way, and not just, be super transactional about it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for bringing this topic to the show. Again, I just want to put things out there for people who may really want to dig a little deeper, and whether you're struggling with something or you just want to take your mind to a new place, and as like I said, clear the pipes. I think this is something to consider. And so, Neil Markey, thank you so much for being a guest today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. Please rate and review the show where you listen to the podcast. And did you know that Asking for a Friend is available now to listen on YouTube? You can subscribe to the podcast there as well. Your support is appreciated, and it helps others find the show. Thank you.